My name is Betty Fender, and at 32 years old, I had spent most of my adult life being the stable one, the dependable one, the woman who held everything together even when the person I loved seemed determined to test the limits of my patience. It wasn't glamorous, but for 3 years, it was my reality. People like to romanticize being the calm center in someone else's storm. They imagine it as peaceful noble. But the truth is, when you stand still long enough, people stop seeing you as someone with needs of your own. You become scenery, something that gently supports them while they chase after whatever thrill they believe will make them feel alive. That was the dynamic between me and my boyfriend, Mark Turner. Mark was charming in that reckless, magnetic way people confuse with depth. When we first met, he was recovering from a brutal breakup with his ex-girlfriend, Lena, a woman he described as manipulative, volatile, and emotionally exhausting. He painted her as a walking catastrophe. According to him, she cheated, lied, gaslit, and shredded him emotionally. He said she left him shaky, his word like a building after an earthquake. And I was supposed to be the reconstruction crew. In the beginning, I didn't mind. I thought I was helping him heal. I listened to his rants about Lena's chaos. I held him when he cried about old wounds. I encouraged him when he wanted to switch careers. I even paid off a chunk of his credit card debt because he said the financial stress kept him trapped in the trauma. I told myself I was investing in our future, but investment only works when both people contribute. Slowly, quietly, I realized I was the only one pouring anything in. Mark wasn't rebuilding his life with me, he was resting in mine. And then there was the shadow that never truly left Lena. At first, he talked about her with anger and pain, but around the 6-month mark, something changed. The bitterness softened into nostalgia. The criticisms became fond recollections. What used to be, "She destroyed me," turned into, "We had such an intense connection." He dropped little reminders of her into everyday conversations. "Oh, Lena loved this band. Lena used to make me try this restaurant. Lena said this was her favorite beach." Each time he mentioned her name, something in me tightened. It wasn't jealousy. It was a deep, sinking sense that my stability had grown boring to him, that the quiet life I offered felt too safe compared to the high-drama roller coaster Lena represented. I set boundaries. I told him that constantly bringing up his ex made me uncomfortable. He said I was insecure. He said it so casually, so dismissively, that it felt like a slap. "You're threatened by my past, Betty. That's on you, not me." He framed it like he was being reasonable and I was overreacting. To avoid conflict, I let it slide. I thought if I stayed patient, if I stayed loving, he would eventually see what we had. But people addicted to chaos don't crave peace. They crave adrenaline. It all came crashing down on a Wednesday. I came home from a long workday expecting to find Mark sprawled on the couch, half watching TikTok or waiting for me to decide what we'd eat for dinner. But the apartment felt different. Not lived in, not warm. It smelled like Cologne's strong, sharp scent he never wore for me. Mark was in the bathroom getting ready, like he was preparing for a photo shoot. He wasn't wearing his normal casual clothes. He was in a crisp button-down I'd bought him for our anniversary. His hair was styled, his face was freshly shaved. There was purpose in every movement he made. "Wow," I said, setting my keys down, trying to ignore the pit forming deep in my stomach. "Are we going somewhere?" He didn't look up. "No," he said, simply adjusting his sleeves. "I'm going out." "With who?" I asked. He turned then. The look on his face wasn't guilty. It was defiant, as if he'd already prepared his speech and rehearsed every justification. "Lena texted me," he said. "She's going through a rough time. She broke up with someone, and she's really struggling." My breathing stopped for a full second, and I asked even though I already knew. "She told me she misses me." He continued, his voice painfully steady. "She said I'm the only one who ever understood her. She needs closure." Closure, the favorite word of people who refuse to cut the cords that strangle them. "And you're meeting her?" I asked. "It's not a date," he snapped, rolling his eyes. "God, Betty, why do you twist everything? She needs support." "I'm being a decent person." There it was, the righteousness, the moral superiority he wielded like a shield. "You spent an hour getting ready," I said. "You're wearing the shirt I bought you. You don't look like a man going to comfort someone. You look like someone going to impress someone." He scoffed and muttered under his breath, "You're dramatic." But beneath his irritation, I saw it, the thrill, the excitement, the anticipation he tried to hide. He wanted this. He wanted her, and he wanted me to validate it by staying quiet. He grabbed his wallet and cologne, spraying himself lightly before walking toward the door. "Mark," Weiss said. my voice dropping into a calm I didn't fully understand yet. "If you walk out that door to meet her, don't expect this door to be open when you come back." He barked out a laugh, a mocking, unbelieving sound. "Please, you love me too much to do anything like that." He opened the door. I looked him dead in the eyes. "Go ahead," I whispered. "Find out." He stopped for a split second, then rolled his eyes and left, pulling the door shut behind him. The lock clicked into place, and with that small metallic sound, something inside me crystallized, something sharp, cold, and devastatingly clear. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't chase after him. Instead, I walked to the closet, pulled out his suitcases, and began to pack his life with the same care I had spent 3 years giving to him. He walked out for her, and I was done waiting. I didn't rush. I didn't stomp or slam or throw things. Instead, I moved with a strange, almost ceremonial calm, like I was performing the final steps of a ritual I didn't realize I'd been preparing for all along. Mark's side of the closet had always irritated me. His clothes hung in uneven lengths, shirts he never wore mixed with items I'd bought him to elevate his look. Now, without him in the apartment, the space felt unnaturally quiet. I pulled out his large gray suitcase, the one he insisted on because he wanted to feel like a businessman at the airport, even though he never traveled for work. I unzipped it on the bed. I folded each item piece by piece. Shirts he never washed properly. Jackets he didn't deserve. Shoes I bought whenever he had an interview or networking event. I wanted the exit to look orderly, deliberate. I refused to give him the satisfaction of telling people I lost control. No Mark Turner would remember that I handled his ending with the same patient precision with which I had handled his entire life. As I moved through the bedroom, something surprising hit me. Without his clutter, without his piles of clothes, without the half-dirty coffee cups he left on the nightstand, the room suddenly looked like me. My colors, my design, my calm. A realization washed over me like a tide coming in too fast. He never built a life with me. He simply set his chaos down inside mine. I stood there for a long second with one of his shirts in my hand, the fabric limp between my fingers, and felt the truth burn through my chest. He hadn't grown with me or beside me. He'd grown comfortable on top of me, on my labor, on my stability, on my willingness to clean up every disaster. And tonight he'd exchanged me for nostalgia with a woman who broke him. The irony was almost poetic. I continued packing his jeans, workout clothes he never used, chargers, books, the colognes he bought, because Lena once liked them, everything that had quietly seeped into my space until it drowned me. Then I moved to the bathroom. His toiletries covered half the counter. Beard oils, hair serums, aftershaves, overpriced moisturizers he bought impulsively after watching random TikTok videos. I swept them neatly into a tote bag, zipped it, and set it near the suitcases by the door. The apartment felt lighter already. Then came the digital severance. I walked into the living room, powered up the TV, and logged out of every streaming service, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, forcing him out of my accounts. He didn't pay for any of them. He'd always shrugged and said, "You can take care of it, babe. You manage that stuff better." Not anymore. I changed passwords on everything he used quietly without malice, just necessity. Then I opened my laptop, logged into our internet provider's portal, and changed the Wi-Fi password. I stared at the cursor for a moment, then typed, "Move on now, 123. It made me smile, a small, cold smile I hadn't felt in months. He'd know the second he walked back in. His phone would disconnect. His pride would twinge. His illusion of entitlement would wobble. Good. By the time the clock hit 9:30, every trace of him was removed. Closet empty. Bathroom cleared his nonsense. Locked out of my digital world. I even removed his favorite mug from the dish rack and placed it inside the first suitcase nestled between sweaters. The living room looked cleaner than it had in years. No abandoned socks, no tangled charging cords, no lingering resentment stuck in corners like dust. It almost looked like the home of a woman who respected herself. I lined his suitcases in the entryway, all 4 of them, along with 3 neatly packed boxes. The scene looked like a hotel lobby, cold, organized, unnervingly final. I turned off every light in the apartment and sat in the dark on the velvet armchair he always said was too mature for him. I let the city lights fall across the floor in soft orange streaks. The apartment hummed with a silence I hadn't heard since before Mark moved in. Not anxious silence, not waiting silence, liberating silence. I waited. I didn't call him. I didn't track his location. I didn't pace or rehearse speeches. I simply breathed. At 12:42 a.m., I heard the building's front door slam downstairs. then the slow hum of the elevator rising. He was home. Too late. Hours too late for anything he could say to matter. I stayed seated. The elevator dinged. Footsteps shuffled down the hall, then the sound of a key scraping against the lock. He fumbled. Drunk, clumsy, high, on adrenaline, probably all three. He opened the door into pitch-black darkness. "Babe." His voice was bright, strained. "Why are all the lights off?" He stepped inside and immediately tripped over the first suitcase. "What the— Ow! Why is all this crap by the door? Did you order something?" He reached blindly for the switch and flipped it on. Light flooded the entryway. He saw everything: the luggage, the boxes, the tote bags filled with toiletries and electronics. His entire life lined up like a silent announcement. His brows pulled together in confusion. Then fear. "Betty, why are my bags packed?" I stood from the armchair, stepping slowly into the light. The smell hit me instantly. Something harsh, cheap, and unmistakably feminine. A perfume note that wasn't mine. A trace of someone else clinging to him like oil. Not just dinner, not just closure, not just support. He reeked of Lena. "What are you talking about?" he said, his voice cracking just slightly. It wasn't like that. We were at a crowded place. People were smoking. "You smell like her, Mark," I said, my voice flat. "Not cigarette smoke, not a bar. Her." His eyes darted, searching for a lie strong enough to save him. "There was nothing, Betty, come on. Don't be like this. We just talked." I stepped closer, not enough to touch him, just enough to block his path. "You aren't coming in," I said. His face twisted. "Are you serious I live here?" "Not anymore," I replied, my voice steady, almost serene. "Your name isn't on the lease. You don't pay rent. And 3 hours ago you made your choice." My hand lifted toward the door. "And now you're going to live with it." His mouth fell open. A tiny crack of panic brightened his eyes. "Betty, no, you can't be serious." But I was. More serious than I had ever been. For a moment, he just stood there blinking at me as if waiting for the joke. As if I would suddenly soften, laugh, and pull him into my arms like I always had. Like the Betty who absorbed his mistakes without consequence would magically reappear. But she was gone. She died the moment the elevator took him to her. Mark stepped forward anyway, as if muscle memory still guided him to push past me, to step inside the apartment that had always bent to accommodate him. "Move," he said quietly, a warning disguised as disbelief. I didn't move. I didn't even sway. I simply looked at him steadily, calmly, unshaken. "You're not coming in, Mark." His shock fractured into anger. "Betty, you're being ridiculous. I told you it wasn't a date. It was just dinner. I was trying to be a good person." "You dressed up in the shirt I bought you," I replied. "You spent an hour grooming yourself before rushing to meet the woman you said ruined your life. That's not empathy. That's intention." He scoffed and dragged a hand through his hair, the same hair now slightly mussed, as if someone else's fingers had been in it. "Oh my God, Betty, you're impossible. I was helping someone who needed me. I'm not going to apologize for caring." "There's a difference," I said, "between caring and betraying." His jaw worked, clenching and unclenching like he was chewing down the urge to shout. A flicker of desperation crossed his face. "So you're just throwing away our entire relationship," he said. 3 years. Gone. "You threw it away before you left the apartment," I said evenly. "You walked out the door. You made your choice." "That's insane," he snapped. "People talk to their exes. It happens. You're acting like I cheated." "You don't have to sleep with someone to betray me," I said. "You did that the moment you chose her feelings over ours." "Nothing happened," he shouted, his volume rising in panic. "Nothing." "That's not the part that matters," I said softly. His face contorted at that because he understood exactly what I meant. The betrayal wasn't whether lips touched or bodies intertwined. The betrayal was the decision he made before any of that could happen. He had already crossed the line in his mind, in his heart, and in his intentions. Mark's voice cracked. "Betty, where am I supposed to go? I can't look. My parents are out of town. I don't have anywhere to stay tonight." "Oh, you do," I said. "Go to Lena." His breath hitched. "Are you kidding me?" "You spent 6 hours with her," I said, pointing to the suitcases. "You prioritized her tonight, so clearly that's where your loyalty is." His voice faltered small for the first time. "Betty, she can't take me in. She lives in a studio. She barely has space for her own stuff." "Not my problem," I said. He stared at the suitcases like they were accusations carved in stone. Then he surged into pleading mode. "Betty, please," he said, his voice breaking. "Don't do this. I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have gone. I wasn't thinking. Just let me come in and we'll talk about it in the morning." I shook my head. "There's no morning for us." He pressed his palms together, actually clasped them, as if praying. It would have been almost touching if I didn't know how easily he could turn on the waterworks the moment he needed something. "Betty, please," he begged. "I'm sorry. I'll block her. I'll delete her number. I'll do anything, I swear. You weren't sorry when you walked out, I said. You weren't sorry when you chose the rush of being wanted by the one woman you shouldn't be anywhere near. You weren't sorry when you sprayed cologne to impress her. You're only sorry because you lost the safety net. He flinched. I didn't. His voice cracked again. I didn't think you'd actually do it. No, I said. You didn't think I had the spine to do it. You thought I'd always bend, that I'd always wait. Silence hung between us, heavy, final. His eyes darted to the hallway, to the stacked suitcases, to me searching desperately for a crack in the armor, searching for the version of me who always forgave first. He didn't find her. I reached past him, opened the front door wide, and held it steady with my hand. This is me, I said, helping you move closer to what you want. He swallowed hard. Betty, don't. You chose her. Follow through. Tears welled up in his eyes. Not the dramatic kind he weaponized during arguments, but the raw, panicked kind of someone realizing their consequences had finally arrived. Betty, I have nowhere, he whispered. You had somewhere, I said, and you walked out. I grabbed the first suitcase, rolled it into the hallway, and set it beside the elevator. Then the next, and the next. 7 bags in total, 3 years of burden condensed into portable weight. He watched with a trembling jaw, unable to process the fact that I wasn't bluffing. When the last box hit the hallway floor, I stepped back inside. Mark made one last frantic reach for my arm. Betty, please, he said, his voice cracking in a way that once would have broken me. You're going to regret this. No, I said, I'm finally correcting a mistake. He stared at me stunned. He waited for the softening, the hesitation, the forgiveness he'd always been able to wring from me when he needed it. It never came. I closed the door. He began pounding, immediately shouting my name, begging, switching between anger and desperation like a man in withdrawal. I heard the scraping of suitcase wheels. I heard a muffled curse. I heard his phone chime, probably realizing the Wi-Fi was gone. Then I heard something else. Silence. The kind of silence that marks an ending. I walked back to the armchair, picked up the glass of water I'd poured earlier, and sat down. My pulse was steady, my breathing even. I had always feared losing him. But now, in the dim orange glow of the streetlights, surrounded by the absence of his chaos, I felt something shocking. Relief. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. My eyes opened naturally at 7:02 a.m., sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor in soft gold stripes. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't brace myself for Mark's mood. I didn't tiptoe around the emotional minefield he created whenever he woke up feeling insecure, resentful, or restless. There were no passive-aggressive sighs from the bathroom, no accusations about me breathing too loudly, no tension waiting in the kitchen like a storm cloud. Just stillness. I made coffee and stood on the balcony as the steam curled into the morning air. It was the most expensive feeling I'd ever tasted, because regaining your peace after losing yourself costs pieces of your soul. The breakup didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for far too long. The fallout began around noon. First came the texts. Mark, I can't believe you did this. I'm at a hotel. You need to send me money for the room. Pick up the phone, Betty. Stop being childish. We need to talk like adults. I didn't open anything past the previews. I didn't block him immediately either. I wanted to see plainly and unfiltered how quickly he'd switch tones. He didn't disappoint. By 2 p.m., the pleas turned into insults. You overreacted. You're cruel. How dare you throw me out after everything I've been through? Everything he had been through, as if I had never carried a single piece of the burden he routinely dropped at my feet. As if I hadn't patched together his self-esteem after Lena ripped it apart. As if I hadn't held him through breakdowns, paid his debts, supported every impulsive decision he called a career path. I blocked him. Then came the unknown numbers. Blocked. Then came the mutual circle, his friends, not mine. The people I tolerated because loving him meant tolerating everything orbiting him. Sarah called first. Betty, she said, in a tone dripping with self-righteous judgment. Mark is hysterical. He says you kicked him out in the middle of the night. That's unsafe. You're being unreasonable. Sarah, I said calmly, he has all his things. He was with Lena for 6 hours. He'll be fine. That isn't the point, she fumed. He made a mistake and you're being dramatic. Just let him come home. He already did, I replied. His choice last night was his true home. I blocked her mid-sentence, then blocked the next 5 who tried. The last message I saw before silencing them all read, You'll regret this. He loves you. You're just emotional. The irony almost made me laugh. Because the truth was this, I wasn't emotional at all. I was the calmest I had ever been. Over the next few weeks, my world changed quietly but decisively. Without Mark's constant spending on impulsive purchases, new shoes, new tech gadgets, skincare fads, he used once and forgot about my bank account, stopped bleeding, and started filling. I didn't realize how much I'd been subsidizing his life until he was gone. I joined a high-end gym, one I always said I couldn't justify while covering his messes. I started running again. I bought myself nicer clothes, not because I needed to impress anyone, but because I wanted to wear things that made me feel like the woman I was becoming. I took on extra consulting work and realized how much mental bandwidth had been trapped under the weight of managing a grown man who refused to manage himself. Every part of my life got lighter. And quietly, steadily, Mark's life fell apart. I didn't look for updates, but the people who remained genuine in my life, the ones who never loved him to begin with, shared the pieces they heard. First, he moved in with Lena. Of course he did. Nostalgia makes people delusional. They always forget that the flame that burned bright enough to draw them back is the same one that scorched them the first time. The fantasy lasted barely 3 weeks. The reality, Lena, was every ounce the disaster he used to cry about. And this time he didn't have me to stabilize him. Then came the next update. He lost his job, too many missed shifts, too distracted, too consumed by relationship drama to keep up. Lena kicked him out about 6 weeks after he showed up at her door. She found someone else younger, easier, and without the emotional baggage Mark dragged behind him like broken luggage. He started couch surfing. I knew all this secondhand. I didn't check on him. I didn't stalk his accounts. Even when he started posting vague, self-pitying quotes about heartbreak and betrayal, I didn't look. I didn't need to. I wasn't angry at him anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't vindictive. I felt nothing. He became like a character from a book I'd finished reading, a chapter I remembered, but had no desire to revisit. Mark was a story that had ended neatly and logically, with consequences he authored himself. By month 4, I finally received a message from him in a place I hadn't expected: email. Subject line, I miss my best friend. The body was worse, dripping with self-pity. I know I messed up. I was confused. Lena manipulated me. I didn't know what I was doing. I realize now that what we had was real. Please, Betty, can we get coffee? I just need to hear your voice. I moved the email to the trash, then emptied the trash. I didn't even feel the satisfaction people expect from closure, just a quiet finality. The truth is, love didn't die the night he walked out. Respect did. And without respect, love has nothing to hold on to. Around the 8-month mark, my life was unrecognizable compared to where it had been. I had more stability, more confidence, more peace. I even met someone, a man whose presence didn't drain me or make me anxious. A pediatrician named Daniel. He communicated clearly. He didn't worship chaos. He didn't romanticize his past. He didn't talk about exes like they were unfinished novels. One evening, I found myself at a high-end organic grocery store, ironically the kind Mark always said we couldn't afford while asking me to fund his hobbies. I was picking up ingredients to cook dinner for Daniel. Good steaks, fresh asparagus, a bottle of wine that felt like a small celebration of my autonomy. Standing in line with my basket listening to a podcast, I felt genuinely content. Then I heard it, a voice hesitant, thin, stripped of its once bright charm. I froze. Slowly I turned. Mark stood there, and I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was unwashed, his clothes wrinkled, stained, baggy. He looked exhausted beyond tired, like someone whose soul had been drained dry. His eyes were puffy and red around the edges. His posture slumped. The vibrancy he once had, the restless energy he wielded like currency, was gone. In his basket, a frozen dinner, a cheap bottle of wine. In mine, a full, healthy life. He stared at me as if looking at a ghost, or maybe as if he was the ghost and I was the one still alive. Wow, he said, voice small. You look incredible. And because I had no reason to pretend, I answered plainly, I'm doing well. He swallowed the shame obvious in every line of his face. He inched a step closer, invading the space where he once felt entitled to stand. I think about you all the time, Betty, he whispered. All the time. I messed everything up. I miss you so much. I need you. His voice cracked, his eyes glistened, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel pulled into his gravity. I felt free of it. For a long moment, we just stood there in that checkout line, him holding a basket of collapse, me holding a basket of the life I'd carefully rebuilt. The fluorescent lights above us hummed faintly, washing over his tired face, exaggerating the hollow under his eyes and the grayish tint in his cheeks. The Mark I once knew had been all swagger and restless vitality. The man in front of me now looked like he'd been living in survival mode. Can we talk? He asked, voice cracking. Just for a second, I maintained careful the polite, level tone I would use with a stranger who accidentally bumped into me on the street. What would you like to talk about? He blinked, stunned by the neutrality in my voice. Betty, come on. You don't have to pretend. I know you're still angry. I'm not angry, I said, truly. That seemed to scare him more than if I had yelled. He stepped a little closer, as if proximity could revive something long dead. I've been miserable, he said, lowering his eyes. You have no idea how hard it's been. I think I have an idea, I replied. I just don't see how that's my responsibility. His jaw tightened. I made mistakes. Okay, I get that. I was stupid. Lena messed with my head. She twisted everything. I wasn't thinking straight. I held up one finger. Stop right there. He froze. Whatever Lena did after you ran back to her, I said is between you and her. But she didn't manipulate you when you dressed up to go see her. She didn't control your hand when you sprayed the cologne I bought you. She didn't force you to leave the apartment after I set a very clear boundary. He swallowed hard, looking like someone who'd just been pushed toward a mirror he didn't want to face. I know, he whispered, and I've thought about that so much. I hurt you. I hurt the one person who ever actually cared about me. I did care, I said quietly, but caring isn't the same as sacrificing my sanity. His eyes welled again. Betty, I can't do this alone. I need you. I need us. Please. There it was, the real reason. Not love, not regret, not accountability. Need. Need for shelter, need for stability, need for the peace I had always given him for free. He stared at my basket, his gaze lingering on the steak and wine, the ingredients for a life that had moved on without him. You're seeing someone, he said softly, the realization breaking through him like a small, painful crack. Yes, I answered. He blinked slowly. Do you love him? We've only been dating a month, I said, but he brings me peace. And he's emotionally consistent. He doesn't weaponize vulnerability or nostalgia. Mark's face twisted pain, shame, jealousy, confusion, all tangled into a knot behind his eyes. I can be that he insisted. I can change. I have changed. I've grown so much these past months. I let him finish. Then I spoke with the clarity I wished I'd had years ago. You're not suffering because you lost me, Mark. You're suffering because you gambled on the wrong person and life proved you wrong. He looked like I'd slapped him. You bet your future on the thrill of nostalgia with a woman who broke you once already. You bet against stability, against maturity, against the idea that love sometimes means being bored on a Tuesday night instead of chasing chaos. His bottom lip trembled. You're being cruel, he whispered. This isn't you. You're right, I said. The woman who accepted your chaos, who forgave every boundary you stomped on, who silenced herself to keep you comfortable, she doesn't exist anymore. You walked her to the elevator the night you left to meet Lena. The cashier's voice cut through the tension. Next customer, please. I stepped forward to the register. Mark took a shaky half-step toward me. Please, Betty, he said, desperation sharpening his tone. Don't leave me like this. I have nothing. I placed my groceries on the conveyor belt, keeping my voice soft but firm. You have your freedom, I said. That's what you chose. Now live with the choice. His breath hitched. His hands fell uselessly to his sides. You don't understand, he pleaded. I'm alone. I'm completely alone. I looked at him. Really looked at him and felt nothing but a soft, distant compassion. Not for him, at least, not for the man he became, but for the version of me who had once believed she needed to save him. You aren't alone because I left you, I said gently. You're alone because every time someone gave you trust, you burned it. I was just the last one. The beep of the scanner filled the silence. I paid, slid my card, and grabbed my reusable bag. Mark tried one more time, voice cracking like he was holding back a sob. Betty, don't walk away. I didn't look back. Take care of yourself, Mark, I said. Then I walked toward the exit. Behind me, he didn't call my name again. He didn't follow. He just stood there frozen beneath the grocery store's harsh lights, holding a basket that looked pathetic compared to the weight of the choices that brought him there. Outside, the air was crisp, clean. My car sat where I left it like a promise of everything I'd gained. I put my groceries in the trunk, got in, started the engine, and turned up the music. I didn't check the rearview mirror. I had a dinner to cook. For someone who showed up, for someone who brought peace. For myself. Driving home that evening felt different. Lighter, almost unreal. The city lights blurred across my windshield like soft ribbons of gold, and the hum of the engine beneath me felt steady, grounding, familiar. I rolled down the window slightly, letting the cool air move through my hair, letting it carry away any remnants of the old version of me, the woman who would have driven home with a lump in her throat, questioning her choices, wondering if she had been too harsh. This time there was no doubt, no guilt, no second guessing. By the time I pulled into my parking space, I had already mentally shifted into the night ahead, cooking dinner, lighting candles, laughing with Daniel as we tried a new recipe neither of us had made before. He wasn't perfect, but he brought something into my life that Mark never had. Peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from smoothing over someone else's chaos. A real sturdy peace that came from mutual respect. Two adults choosing each other, not clinging to each other. A peace that didn't require me to shrink. I carried my groceries upstairs, unlocked my door, and stepped into my apartment, the same apartment I'd once shared with Mark, but which now finally felt like it belonged to me. The suitcases that had once filled this entryway were a memory, now not an ache. The ghost of who I had been didn't linger here anymore. I unpacked the bags, placed the wine on the counter, and took a moment to inhale the stillness of my home. The soft glow of the lamps, the quiet background hum, the gentle order of everything I had reclaimed, all of it. And I hadn't realized until tonight how much I'd missed myself. I chopped vegetables, seared the steaks, set the table. Every small act felt like stitching myself back together. Every seasoning and sizzle felt new, not because the world had changed, but because I had changed inside of it. When Daniel arrived, he stepped inside with that calm smile he always wore, the kind of smile that didn't pretend to be anything but genuine warmth. "It smells incredible in here," he said, slipping off his jacket. "It's been a good day," I replied. We cooked together, talked, teased each other about our differing methods, and when we finally sat down to eat, I felt fully present in a way I hadn't been able to for years. There was no part of me scanning for emotional landmines, no hypervigilance waiting for tones to shift, no fear that any moment of peace would be shattered. The only thing in front of me was the man across the table and the life I had chosen to rebuild. Later that night, when he left and the apartment returned to its quiet, I curled up on my couch with a warm blanket and let the silence settle. This wasn't the heavy silence that had filled my home the night Mark walked out. This was the silence of a woman who had finally stopped abandoning herself. I thought of him only once, just enough to acknowledge the ghost of our story. He had once been the center of my life. Now he was a lesson, a necessary closing chapter. People think the hardest part of leaving someone is the moment you close the door on them. But the hardest part is closing the door on the person you used to be. The one who tolerated the chaos, the one who accepted the crumbs, the one who excused the disrespect. But once you do it, once you really do it, everything after becomes easier. The next morning I woke up without sadness, without nostalgia, without the urge to check my phone. My life had rhythm again, purpose, color, a future. And somewhere out there, Mark was probably still trying to piece together how everything slipped away. But that was his journey, his consequence, his road to walk. I had my own road now. I stood by the window, sipping my tea, watching the sun rise over the city. The light spilled across my living room like a quiet promise. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt whole. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the supporting character in somebody else's story. I was my own. I smiled small, real, and unforced. Mark Turner was a stranger I used to know, and my life finally was mine again.